coming up on a very special Husky Hate Week episode of Once a Duck.
My first time playing in Seattle, they're trying to warn you like, hey, you guys are going to go out to the field first, and then UW's going to come right behind you and start, barking and chirping and everything like that. So, the DBs, we got to be the guy right in the back, waiting for them to come out there, start chirping, and, it gets physical. Nick Aliotti out there trying to break things up.
All that and more coming up.
Where's your favorite place to take college game day? And I say every time, Eugene, Oregon.
That's right, Duck fans. We are back with another episode of the Once a Duck podcast. The type of episode that's very special, very near and dear to our hearts because it's Husky Hate Week. Sitting with me, maybe somebody who hates the Huskies more than anybody else I know. Definitely a top fiver on that list. Make it nice and loud, everybody, for Nick Cody. Nick, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, thank you. Oh, you guys are great. Oh, I really didn't need the introduction or round of applause, but thank you. Thank you, Sam, and all our Once a Duck fans out there. It's the last week of the regular season, and more importantly, as we've said, it's Husky Hate Week. We got a little extra bye week there where we got to get our hate right, but everyone knows I don't like the Huskies because I'm a lifelong Washingtonian, and I always have to hear it, especially the past couple of years up here living in the Seattle area. But hey, you know what? This week, we can make up for all of it, and I hope you guys are following us on all the social medias already, at Once a Duck, at Nick R. Cody for myself, or for my co-host here, Sam, at Samuel101TS. So, with the bye week behind us, we got to first address that Wisconsin game. Now, 16-13. Now, that doesn't quite explain exactly the kind of poise that this team needed to be able to pull this one out, but I think it showed everything in our Ducks highlight video that came out last week, that as soon as Jump Around came out, this team was ready to finish the game. And you know what? Proud as hell of them for pulling it out, but it certainly didn't turn out the way either of us would have expected.
I mean, not at all. We both had predictions that were something in the 30s to something in the teens, more or less, a pattern that at least stood strong throughout most of this Oregon football season, it appeared. But my goodness, this was a difficult game. This was a difficult game top to bottom. This was 100% the trap game opportunity we knew that it could be. It's exactly the type of game that it was. I mean, you just look at the play sheet, you just look at how these drives turned out throughout this game. Punt, field goal, punt, interception, punt, field goal, punt. It's one of those type of games. This was a classic Big Ten ball game. About time finally that Oregon got themselves into one of these. And I mean, I think we're going to talk about it ad nauseum, Nick, but all teams play these type of games. All good teams have to go on the road, play a really difficult opponent, play the type of opponent that is going to give you a really hard time, especially in their own backyard. Great teams are able to win those type of ball games. I know that you were on teams that are able to sneak out of games, win those type of ball games. This Oregon team did so as well. And I think that in and of itself is impressive as heck to see from this ball club.
Yeah, and I think I've seen a lot of people, I did it myself, compared it to the Cal game. But that was before I really sat back and looked at both. Such a different game right there. Maybe, kind of the final score being not as expected and having to pull it out late, but we had the lead and we're just eating clock. In this situation, man, they did get 2 more possessions left, but this felt so much more like our defense going out there and winning a game, and especially Atticus Sappington on the special teams being able to seal it out there and get some big kicks when they matter in situations where in the past maybe an Oregon kicker you wouldn't quite feel so reliable on. But again, this was just a really different kind of game, and it makes you really, really confident in the defensive talent we have. Just in any type of situation on the road, when you have a defense like that, it travels and it can put you and keep you in any football game against any opponent. So especially going into this 12-team playoff format that we'll have the first year of, that's going to be hugely important.
Well, and I think that this Oregon defense, they played one of, if not their best games of the season here against Wisconsin. And it was in a time where they really, really needed to. If you would have told me that Oregon only scores 16 points going into this ball game, I might have said that was going to be an upset right there. Not because I don't trust this Oregon defense. I just haven't seen them really in a position where they needed to keep somebody from scoring like that. I mean, even in the games against Boise State and against Idaho that were close games at the beginning of the season, it felt throughout the games, at least being in the building, that anytime Oregon needed to go drive and score, they could and they would. They did so at the end of the Boise State game when they needed to drive down the length of the field and kick a field goal. They're able to do that. Felt like they needed to in that Idaho game. They scored to start the fourth quarter on a drive where they really needed to get one. They did. They went up by 2 scores right there. This was a game where, again, you mentioned it, for the majority of the game, Oregon, they were trailing this ball game. They were trailing it significantly, especially after the second quarter. It was all Wisconsin until that 4th and 9 play to start the fourth. Oregon goes up 6-0 in the first after the Sappington field goals, but after that, you get the field goal from Wisconsin, the 31-yarder, and then you get Brandon Locke. He's able to get that pass to Pauling right there, 2 yards outside of the goal line. He's able to step right in. From there on, Wisconsin has the lead until Jordan James scores that touchdown to make it 13-13 with, just about 13-ish minutes left in the fourth quarter. That's just about 2 full quarters going right there with the other team in control. Now, Oregon's still able to pick up some first downs here and there. They're making some big plays on defense throughout, but it's not the kind of dominance this fan base came to expect throughout this season. I didn't know, frankly, exactly how Oregon would react under those circumstances. It was great to see them react the way they did.
Yeah, and not only that, it was just overall the things they had to overcome. The weather, we weren't worried about being an issue, but it turned out the wind was definitely a challenge for us in the passing game. And Dylan definitely didn't look as comfortable out there, but you made the plays when you needed to. And what was really weird is the beginning of that game, it felt like the offense was clicking pretty well. We were outgaining them, but we were having to kick field goals instead of go down and get touchdowns. And you can see, if you do that early in football games and settle into that, the difficulty it can have when you're on the road. And especially, again, the second straight team that had a bye week right before us had us game planned. Even Luke Fickell said it after the game. He said, our guys played our butts off, and this is what we expected them to do. And we gave ourselves a really good opportunity to win. And he was right. They definitely had a great game plan for Oregon. And, we looked like a team that had been playing 8 straight weeks there. But again, found a way, and props again to this coaching staff for maybe foreseeing a lot of that. And there was the potential, if they didn't address a situation like being there in Camp Randall and be expecting jump around, there are teams that would, shy away from that moment or maybe try and shut it out. But our team embraced it, figured, hey, if everybody knows what their assignment is and what they're going to do, who cares if we jump around with it? And you could tell it kind of psyched out Wisconsin more than anything. They were kind of thinking, shit, these guys, they not care. They're the number 1 team in the country and they're jumping around. I loved it. I know a lot of people had a lot of different opinions on it. What did you think, Sam?
I thought it was a good tone shift, honestly. I really thought, because frankly, I did assume the entire time, okay, well, they're going to come out here and punt to start the fourth quarter. And if you come out and punt to start the fourth quarter, this feels like a really good time to get defense hyped up, get everybody really locked in, just, get that energy level up a little bit. And then I saw them come out to run a play on 4th and 9 to start the fourth quarter from barely over midfield. And I realized it was for an entirely different purpose. It was an entirely different reason they were getting this team hyped up and locked in all at once. And we're going to go over it during our tape time segment. But my God, what a time for that play. What a time for that moment. And looking back on it, this Oregon football team, they lean into something that I don't think a lot of other coaching staffs do, really. And it's that they're not afraid to really lean into the more cinematic moments, if you will. It seems like there's a lot of teams and a lot of coaches that are like, no, we're doing what we do, the way we do it, our thing, same thing every single week. Whereas Dan Lanning, it's not the same thing every single week, and that he's willing to lean into moments, lean into what his players are feeling, lean into the themes of the week, if you will. It always seems like something where Sometimes there are a real advantage to having a younger coach that can kind of identify with the generation that he's recruiting and coaching a little bit. Seems like Dan Lanning's really, really able to do that, and jump around felt like just another example of that.
Yeah, and again, looked like a lot of the guys were having fun, except as a lineman, I did recognize, man, it's cold. Those knee braces are tight. We'll just kind of bob a little bit. You could tell the lineman, you're like, all right, guys, it's November. I'm hurting too bad. I'd love to jump around, but
Let the lineman Bob put a fist in the air like this. Let Trayshawn be the one jumping around back and
hey,
funny hopping. Let him take care of all that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, I did notice that and appreciated that a little bit. Another thing I appreciated is that again, not only able to not just defensively as a team, but some of the individual performances. A guy that Jamari Caldwell doesn't get enough credit. Him being able to bat that ball up in the air and Mateo to pick it off, that was fantastic. The Mateo hit where he redirected from the pass rush, turned into the guy on the slant and just executed him.
Yeah.
There's very little you can say about that besides, wow, that's just great football instincts and positioning and the athleticism to just deliver a boom in a millisecond that, most people, they're probably going to be the one taking that blow, not Mateo Uiagalelei, man. That guy delivered it. That's why the Young Concrete nickname definitely delivered in that moment.
Well, I think bringing up Mateo, Nick, is a really great way to get into our guide to the game segment. Just a quick look at some of the guys who really had the biggest impact in this one. Now, admittedly, after the game, I did put out a post that was basically like, hey, these three guys were the players of the game. There's no way fans are butts about it. I think we're going to hit some similar names here, but why don't you start? I think I know you're going to say Mateo, but tell us why Mateo is one of the players of the game here.
Man, there's too many reasons, and everybody, at least most people, even if you don't know football, if you watch an Oregon game, you can identify him because he's making it known. The pass rush moves, the instincts, those things have all developed so much for a guy who's really still very, very young in his playing career, but he looks like an elite veteran guy on this team right now, and he's playing like it. The instincts, knowing where to be on the football field, and especially some of the pass rush moves he's able to get in on, Wisconsin especially. You expect that to be elite offensive line play right there, and he was making their tackles really look silly sometimes. And whether that without evaluating those offensive linemen all season, I don't know if that's a regular thing or if they were just so nervous about getting beat that they abandoned a lot of their technique sometimes. And that just, for somebody like Mateo, that's just an easy way to club or rip past a guy and just make quarterback's life a living hell. And he definitely did that. And playmaker right there, and a straight up game breaker. If you're talking about it in a video game sense, that's the kind of update they're going to need to put in the game. Is this guy will completely wreck your offense if you let him, and at times Wisconsin did.
Is that going to be in the new update of college football? Is that going to be like Young Concrete mode? Like after a couple of big hits, all of a sudden.
It should be there, man. Next thing you know, there's a batted ball in the air. It's his. Like, yeah, just one of those extra traits that stands out, especially when guys are down or out. His consistency this season, and being that healthy again for being a young stud out there. I'm just so impressed for it to be November and him just continually getting better and better.
Well, Nick, you covered Mateo right there on the defensive side. I have to go offense. Jordan James was huge in a game when he needed to be. 25 rushes, 121 yards. Do you know who had the next highest yards total in this ball game? I'll give you a hint. He plays quarterback. Dylan Gabriel with 7. Now, to be fair, college statistics, you account sack yards into their rush yards. He had a 22-yard rush in this game, so because of sacks, he gets dropped down to a total of 7 yards rushing. But beyond that, Noah Whittington, he also had 5 yards on 3 carries. This was a game where it was going to be tough to get work done between the tackles. It was going to be tough to get work done in the trenches. Jordan James did just about everything they needed him to. Again, 25 carries, 121 yards, and of course, the touchdown that ended up being huge down the stretch of that ball game. Another guy I want to give a quick nod to, not a full guys of the game play, but a quick nod. Evan Stewart, 10 grabs, 92 yards. Every single one of them massively important. It's another guy who really was big when they needed him to be in this ball game.
Yep. All right. And then on special teams, man, got to talk about Atticus Sappington going on the road in a tough environment with the wind. And hey, going out there and giving us the first 2 scores and then the winning score. Also, potentially could have been a little extra game sealing score there. But we did go for the field goal fake, which we're going to have to just quickly address here before we get into our other subjects. How'd you feel about that, Sam? I kind of like the play call. I just do not like the execution up front.
Well, let's just say there was a reason when I was going through our rushing totals, I left off Ross James for 3 yards. that was a part of it. We're going to dive in a whole lot more in depth about this during our tape time segment because it's 100% one of the things we're going to look at. But just in terms of, let's just say vibe alone, we're going off vibe alone. Oh, it's so tough for me because I hate everything about it, but also it's incredibly Dan Lanning.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly Dan Lanning thing to do, and I don't want to be mad at it because I don't want Dan to stop doing Dan things.
Yeah.
I love Dan doing Dan things. I don't want him to stop doing it. I think when you mentioned the execution, it bugged me right there. Maybe a yard or 2 less to gain. I'm more a fan of it just because the large Aussie can at least fall forward and pick up the yards.
Yeah.
Whereas
the transition from getting off the ground and getting to that C gap was a little slow there.
Oh, not quick.
It went from 3 yards in a cloud of dust to 3 yards in a crowd of what?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, Nick. And I think looking at our time, this is actually a great opportunity to get into our tape time segment. It won't be the first play we look at. You better bet we're going to look at it, though. But, folks, it's time for a little tape time. That's right, everybody. We are here with our tape time segment. The way this one works, you should know by now. We're going to look at some of the tape from Oregon's last game, give you some of our thoughts on what we are seeing. It is tape time. And, Nick, we are starting today in the third quarter. Usually we would start a little sooner in the game than this, but we're starting in the third quarter, about 5:25 remaining. It is 3rd and goal from Wisconsin. They are up by 4. A touchdown here would put them up by 11 if the extra point, of course, is good. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing here. A big play from a guy we talked a lot about already, young concrete, Mateo Uyunglele.
So this is one of the plays that you sent me, I believe Sunday after the game. And I remember, especially because, I love seeing the right tackle break down right here in pass pro like this. So what we have right now is we've got 3 down linemen and a stand-up backer who's made it very, very obvious at the line of scrimmage. They're coming on a blitz. So we used to call this back in the day the KC front is how we used to identify it against our own team because particularly when Coach Kelly took over, we wanted to have a variety of different fronts to throw at people, not just be a traditional 4-down or 3-man front. So often that stand-up guy was a Kenny Rowe, so that was always a tough situation because that's a guy who has the ability to drop back into pass coverage, even if he looks like he's coming. So in this situation here, our right tackle has the slide side coming towards him. That means from the center and the right guard, he really shouldn't have to worry too much about inside leverage providing his hand here. His biggest problem is he leaves his left hand right down here, and Mateo's already too fast. By the time he gets his 3rd step down in his pass set and is trying to settle, he should already be winning with that inside hand, knowing he has the guard's help coming. And especially with the 3 technique right there to that side of the field, that with the slide protection, you don't have to leave that hand there. If it were just you working with the guard, you have to leave it there in case there's some kind of a game. But there is no way after his first step that Mateo is committing to coming back around and inside on the loop. So we don't have a twist stunt. And immediately, as soon as the tackle isn't able to win with his left hand, he has to lean with his upper body, and Mateo just easily works the hands, rips right by him, and gets right in the quarterback's lap. Can't do anything about that if you're an offense.
Well, I think you just nailed it right there. Again, we get to see what happens when Oregon's A1 coaching meets the A1 5-star talent. That's exactly what you see right here. Mateo using that same move we know he uses so well, so effectively, and we see it right here.
And I wish we had that back angle, but I do love just the fact that so many defensive ends, the process of working a move, usually for so many guys, starts with putting the inside arm out there and then working off that with some kind of a club or a rip. But Mateo is so good at, closing the distance with his athleticism and his get off that he knows immediately, if I can just get to contact before the lineman is ready for it, the move I have to throw is just throw him by and make sure he can't get his hands or his outside shoulder on me. So as soon as he's able to get to that tackle's outside shoulder, it's a wrap.
Right after that, Nick, we are going to move along here in our game. Suddenly, it's the fourth quarter. We're skipping all the way ahead to the first play of the fourth quarter. This is one that we said we would for sure be taking a look at, and it's one that we definitely are right here. Right after jump around, 4th and 9, 15 minutes to go, fourth quarter. You are still down by 4 points at your own 41-yard line. Going for it right here. Got to pick up the 32. Obviously, we have the one receiver to the near side. 3 of them all the way up there to the far side, Jordan James to the near side of Dylan Gabriel. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing right here on this ballsy 4th down call from Dan Lanning and his group.
Well, first and foremost, we've got the 6-man protection here, and it's a little shaky. Dylan has to get out of there because it's just wadded up. But the good thing is 11 loses contain, I believe 11. And we just are able to get to the outside, and T. Ferg, man, what a reliable guy to not only just go up and get the ball in that situation and get about 5 more yards than you need, but to do it in traffic. I mean, that guy's a leader. He's had to deal with a couple of injuries this season, but man, talk about being Mr. Reliable when you need it.
I mean, absolutely, Nick. Really a guy who just comes through at a point when you need him so much. That's what I think is so great about having the veteran experience of a Terrence Ferguson on your team, just the kind of guy who's been in these big moments, who knows how to go and make plays in these big moments. And really, the thing that you said that I love here is that this whole thing is designed to just get Gabriel a little freedom here, be able to get him out. Obviously, the pocket collapses, so he's able to roll to that side. But what's so helpful is you already have all his receivers. He knows which direction they're already going. Him being able to roll to his comfortable side, be able to make the play, that is what you want to be able to see from your quarterback, especially a guy who you are thinking has a chance to show up in New York City in the coming weeks. Now we're going to skip ahead a little bit here. We are moving ahead to the touchdown play, the play that allowed Oregon to be able to score the only touchdown for them in this game, and it was a Jordan James run to the right side. I would love to hear a little bit about what you have to say about the blocking here, both from the offensive line and then, of course, downfield. Your guy T. Ferg, somebody I know you love blocking downfield.
Well, especially right now, just with the formation in this situation, we've got our strong side, because it's overloaded, 2 wide receivers and an up back, is clearly into the boundary. So right here, Wisconsin has to respect that. And because they're, we're down in the red zone, you can see we've got the linebackers about 4 or 5 yard depth right there. And the problem is with a counter type run, with the back being offset to the field, you're kind of expecting that inside or that stretch zone play to the area where we have the extra blockers. So when you run weak of that, whoever is that backside linebacker has to be able to beeline it. Well, what we have here is the up back is able to come across with the pulling guard, and the motion of the back being a counter step influences everybody to think it's going to be the front side of the play. But then you're coming back, you're able to get a kick out on the defensive end, and Terrence Ferguson's able to lead the way like he has many plays for Dylan and the running backs to just create that separation. And especially with a guy as big as he is and the size advantage he usually has against those DBs, usually if he just gets up there fast enough and gets his hands on guys, he doesn't even have to hold them for very long, because you're not going to be able to see past him. He has the physical presence and awareness to get there. And the again, that counter motion. I love seeing it from here, from the behind view, because the entire defense is completely going along with what we want them to. And the cutback goes perfect in motion with your two pulling guys. And that's, not back in my day, we weren't running too much counter. We'd usually pull the guard and the tackle too, but that's a great way to run it. And again, great game planning right there for your one touchdown in the game for Oregon.
Well, that one touchdown, it was a big one. They ended up needing it quite a bit, for especially in a game where you only win by 3 points. Oregon, if you ask me, they could have won by about 6 points. Right here, we're going to look at the play that made the difference there. With about 1:49 left on the clock, Oregon, it's 4th down, lining up for a 38-yard field goal, and it ends up being a fake with the holder running to try to pick up some yards here. It doesn't work out for Oregon. Fortunately, this gets to be a play that we look back on and smile at, as opposed to look back at and wonder why it was the downfall of everything. But we get to do that right now. We get to look back on it. Just a little bit of, you take off the rose-colored glasses, the duck-colored glasses, and let's just take a look at this play. Really break it down for me. What are you seeing? How does this make you feel on the inside, Nick? What's going on with this one?
Well, basically, I think I do like the idea and the concept here. There's just a little bit left to be desired with, number one, the ability of the holders get out. Tough to get out of the starting blocks there when you're in a holder position. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, Sam, but it's not exactly the most athletic football position to be in. But the other thing about it is we aren't able to protect the backside leakage here. Now, backside leakage, people might not be, those aren't familiar with football. It isn't what you might be thinking it is. But as we can see right here, the guys that are initially thinking they're going to come block the kick are getting such a good get off that our holder is barely able to get out of his stance without getting tackled right there in the backfield. So that's very dangerous. But as soon as the play opens up, I mean, that hole is there all day. If we have the just a little bit better timing there, or even possibly don't pull that backside tight end, I think this probably gets the first down. But just getting nicked right there in the back and lucky to not be tackled exactly where you're at holding it, I mean, that's just tough because the get off the defense has an attempt to block that. Very, very tough, but almost got it. And I really like the at least the concept, because now coaches in that situation, opposing coaches, are going to have to scheme up for that. They're going to have to show their team that. Whoever plays us in the playoffs has got to show their team that and be expecting that in special teams. And so possibly when you have a really, really tough kick, you might not get a rush. And that's a great situation, not only for the kicker, but believe me, it's one of those guys that used to be on the interior, just getting hammered at, jumped over, pulled down, all kinds of nasty stuff. I loved it when people were too worried about us running a fake field goal, because all I had to do is step down and inside, wait to hear the kick, and watch it go through the uprights.
Skipping ahead here, Nick, getting to the end of this ball game, like the moment that really wrapped this thing up and sealed it for Oregon. A guy who we've seen make a big play already in our tape time segment. It is time for a little Matayo Uiagalelei. This one, another massively important play from this ball game. Obviously, the play that ended up sealing it after Oregon had failed on the field goal attempt to pick up those yards. Wisconsin gets the ball back. 2nd and 3 with 1:38 to go. Still holding on to, I believe, do they have a timeout or not? Let me see here.
Yep, they've got one.
They got a timeout still. This is a dangerous spot to be at if you're Oregon's defense. This is a really dangerous spot to be at. You've got a team driving the field, a team that now has all the confidence, all the momentum in the world at their back and on their side. Right here, though, we get a look at this play. Tell me what you see here. Well, tell us what saved the game for Oregon.
One of my favorite things right here is really what saved the game is our defensive line outclassing Wisconsin's offensive line. Nothing shows that better than if you freeze it up right at 14:20 on this video. Right there, as soon as the quarterback is even trying to find his receiver for the first down right there to the field side, he's already got to deal with the fact all of his linemen, except for one, are basically playing behind their defensive counterpart. I mean, it's a cluster. We've got guys looking like they're going to fall over each other. And the best part is Caldwell, who's technically our anchor, our inside guy, is able to trigger on the rush, come in a little late around the defensive end, and just gets his hand up enough for Mateo to, instincts, whether he saw it or whether it was just plain dumb football luck. He was in the right place at the right time. And instead of being the guy to go get after the quarterback, he was the guy that was able to readjust and get that tip ball and basically seal the game for Oregon. And defensive highlight play, not only of the game, but possibly the season.
Well, and I think something right here that's so valuable is this is such a team effort on this play, right? Obviously, you've got Harmon, who's immediately taking on two. He's immediately taking on two and fighting his way through. Tuioti right here does an amazing little twist, gets inside of Harmon right there, and just has basically just about a free run at the quarterback. A guard right there tries to shift over in time, can't really do it. So him right there, immediately right there, is already forcing the quick pass. Tuioti's already right there. If he holds on for another second, it's a big sack. It's going to be about a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 right here. Then, as you mentioned, Caldwell steps up, gets a hand on it. Mateo disengages so quickly, which I think is also so impressive. Something I don't think we talk about enough when we talk about just how good Mateo is. He is one of the best players I've ever seen in an Oregon football uniform at immediately disengaging the moment where the play is moves. The minute that ball's out, somebody else has it, he disengages and turns toward the action incredibly fast and with an incredible instinct that not many people have. And then, of course, being able to find the ball, locate it, come down with it, of course. We said there might be a corner with interception this game. I was wrong. It turns out it was an edge rusher, and it turns out it was just about the biggest interception of the season.
Seriously. I mean, so there's times in that number 10, he may appear to be a corner, and then you look at him compared to everybody else standing, a couple inches taller and a little bit thicker, and man, you're like, oh, never mind. That's not Palomalu. That's a young concrete right there. And man, another shout out to him, like you said, and a guy that doesn't need a whole lot of celebrating. Just take that football to the sideline, young man, celebrate with the team. I love to see it.
Well, Nick, I think that just about wraps up our tape time segment. Of course, as always, if there's a big play from a game you want to see us break down, let us know. Just reach out to us. Say, hey, Nick, hey, Sam, this quarter, this minute mark, a play I want you guys to look at. We'll be happy to do so. We'll take a look at it during our next tape time segment. But right now, boy, oh boy, am I excited for this one. We've got a great interview coming up, Nick. Somebody I've been wanting to have on this show for a very, very long time. I know you're going to give him a proper intro for the introduction of our interview. But for now, let me just say, folks, the great former Duck, former Super Bowl champion with the Seattle Seahawks, Walter Thurmond III.
With us now is former Super Bowl champ and former Oregon Duck cornerback. Excuse me, man, almost messed that up. Walter Thurmond III. Thank you for joining us, Walt. How are you doing today?
I'm good, man. How you doing? It's been some time.
Yeah, it's been a while, man. It's been not only a long time. I haven't been to Autzen this entire season, and I'll finally be getting to go down this week for the Husky game. Especially as a guy that played for the Seahawks. What's your experience like as being a guy that lived in the Seattle area as a former Duck?
Oh man, it's always interesting being in Seattle, Washington, being a Duck guy. You play for Seahawks. There's that commonality, right? The Seahawks is that common bridge, though. But once college football is there and that rivalry kicks up, it's a Huskies are over there, Ducks over here, and we had a couple of Huskies on the team, so it was always good banter, talking trash. Obviously, the rivalries kind of got a little bit more prominent as both teams were playing more competitively together. But it's always interesting, every time I get a chance to talk, even if it's Seahawks podcast or whatever the case is, they Ducks get brought up. I'll shoot the Ducks out there all day.
Well, it's one question I was kind of wondering from you before we really get into all the Oregon, Washington 2024 stuff. As just a kid back in 2005, when you first step on campus at the University of Oregon, what was your impression of the program through the recruiting process once you got there? And then kind of compare that to how you see things now.
Yeah, it was, coming from Southern California, the recruiting trip was stacked. I mean, we had Oh man, it was probably one of the largest recruiting weekends they had up there. It was like later in the year. It had to be sometime in December, maybe early January. Jonathan Stewart was up there, Jeremiah Johnson, Ed Dixon, a lot of guys that ended up kind of committing on that trip there, ended up being teammates. But it was interesting. It was a very family feel. That was my initial impression. Um, Meeting the guys, meeting the coaching staff. For me, it was I wanted to have an opportunity to compete for a starting job, and I also wanted to run track. And so, I mean, obviously, Oregon being the prestige track school that it is, and then the camaraderie and like just the family nature that the team was with the coaching staff and some of the players there, it just felt like it was a great fit, a right fit for me to be able to be there. I really enjoyed that time earlier on, and then just being able to kind of see the ups and downs of the program, being able to be a focal point of being able to create a new foundation of where we kind of see where this program is, though, kind of change some things and modify some things in the workout aspect of stuff, and making some things more mandatory in the off season. Because again, the whole goal is to win a championship. I mean, the bowl games are nice, but it's the real goal is to be able to win that national championship, and that's something that the schools of UW like to hang over our heads because we don't have that national championship, even though we've gone 2 times, came up short. That first time against Auburn, we were so close. Had a strong opportunity there. But that's what the game is, though. You play for the national championships, and so I think it's great to see where this team is right now. Again, I guess taking a step back then, we really didn't recruit past east of the Mississippi. So a lot of the guys that were on that team were from the West Coast. A lot of guys from Southern California, from California in general. I would probably say almost like 60% of the team in some capacity. And then you get guys from Vegas, Arizona, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and stuff like that. So it was a totally different dynamic of team and culture. I think now, especially with NIL, obviously, Chip got in there. He crossed, went a little further south, a little further east, recruiting guys. Obviously, the popularity of the success of the team got more eyeballs of kids wanting to go to Oregon. So we were able to kind of diversify, where we were pulling recruits, which ultimately I think just helps the program. Being able to kind of pull guys from all the different type of areas around the country there. And I think, Lanning's doing a great job kind of manning this ship here. I had the opportunity to be able to go out there for one of their recruiting trips this past summer and kind of get a vision and hear what he's talking about. Very personal, very down to earth. Talk to you and really get the insight, and you can kind of see what they're looking to do. Obviously, with the emergence of the transfer portal, it's been huge because now we're getting guys that maybe we wouldn't have gotten initially from recruiting because they thought a different school was better fit for them. But now we're able to get some of those guys, get beefier in the offensive line and defensive line, where teams or people have criticized Oregon have being a little bit smaller and not being able to compete with the SEC teams and the Big Ten teams, stuff like that. Which again, we go to the Rose Bowl or play a Big Ten team, we're pretty favorable when we come down into those capacities. Even holding our own in some of those SEC teams there. So it's been a huge, crazy transition these past, just 20 years now, right? We're getting up there from that time now, and so. But I think the program is going in the right direction. I like what Lanning's doing. It's totally different Oregon campus from when we were there, Nick. I know you've been back within the past couple years. I know you haven't been back to a game though, but it's totally different just kind of seeing it, But it's like, hey, we helped build that. It's kind of something you always kind of look back on and see the hard work that we kind of put into where the program is. So it's you have some pride within that.
Well, and you helped build a lot more than just at Oregon, my friend. Before the Legion of Boom, there was a group of D-boys that ran the Pac-12, the Pac-10 back in the day, and you are, I think, our third member of the D-boys we've had officially on here. What's it like for you as a defensive player, seeing now Oregon having our first real defensive head coach in a long, long time, and also seeing this defense so quickly become one of the most formidable in the nation?
Man, it's been, it's great to see. It just gives a different perspective, different aspect to a team, depending if it's offensive head coach or a defensive head coach, because they do put more, I guess, a different type of emphasis on being dominant on the defense side of the ball, getting different stops, maybe not necessarily having like a bend but don't break type of defense where you can still be successful. I mean, again, even within Seattle, Pete Carroll, he was a defensive-minded head coach as well, and so the whole emphasis was, defense is going to get the job done. Offense, they'll do what they're going to do, but the weight of the team, everything's on the weight on the shoulders of the defense there, and you kind of see that a little bit with Landon's team there. I mean, the offense is very efficient and effective. Dylan Gabriel was playing great football out there. What has been most impressive to me of seeing is just kind of how kind of dominant the run game has been in some respects there. It's not that, the traditional what we've seen in the past of kind of, spread run game where you're spreading everybody out and you're getting these creases and lanes where, you're putting a lot of stress on the defense there. We're going kind of toe to toe with a lot of these defensive line, these front sevens and front eight out there, though. So I love seeing that type of football. Where the big men are able to, getting 2-3 yards push off the line of scrimmage. I mean, I love seeing that within this team. So, I mean, the team is being very physical within the trenches. Offensive line, defensive line is having a heck of a job. Secondary is showing up. But, yeah, I really love what's going on right now in Oregon.
Currently, this team, it sits at 11-0 right now. One more game to go before finishing off that regular season. Obviously, there's so much beyond just this regular season this Oregon team's worried about. So finishing 12-0 here, not sure how much that matters to them. From a fan perspective, though, that's always something you want to see. And it seems so fitting that now all of a sudden it's against Washington. It's going to take beating Washington for Oregon to get to that 12-0 mark for the first time since 2010. Walter, when you think about Washington, when you think about the Huskies, what immediately comes to mind? What memories do you have from those matchups from your time at Oregon?
Yeah, it's the Washington team's always been kind of up and down. Played them when they were that 0-12, team that they had there, and every competitive teams. But it's like obviously we know Oregon State. That's the rivalry game, right? It's interstate there. The UW game has been interesting because you have to kind of go back and dig why it's been that way, right? Obviously, you have the Kenny Wheaton pick that kind of turned that aspect to where that started that initial push of it being more of a rivalry game, kind of a state-to-state type of situation. So it's always a big game. It's very fun. It's very competitive. You just never know what you're going to get out there. I mean, we had the run where, we won, I don't know, 10, 12 years in a row there. And so it was like, is it much of a rivalry at a certain type of point? But then as they started getting more competitive and getting better, with Chris Peterson, I think initially kind of coming in there and changing some of the program up and going on from there, it's become a different type of rivalry. And obviously you go into like last season where we had opportunity to kind of win that first game in UW or in Seattle and kind of, come up short with the missed kick there and then Pac-12 championship and again kind of come up short. Those were tough losses because I have a couple guys that are still in Seattle I think with the Seahawks that are UW graduates and get a lot of shit for us still, So it's always good banter of us getting those wins. I mean, I love the atmosphere. My first time playing in Seattle, they're trying to warn you like, hey, you guys are going to go out to the field first, and then UW's going to come right behind you and start, barking and chirping and everything like that. So, the DBs, we got to be the guy right in the back, waiting for them to come out there, start chirping, and it gets physical. Nick Aliotti out there trying to break things up, but I mean, it's fun though. It's all in good spirit, but I mean, it is competitive though. When you put it in any type of aspect of like it's a rivalry game, it means it has a different type of sentiment. Obviously, UW hasn't been the same quality team as they were last year, but that doesn't mean anything in a rivalry game, right? I mean, it's any given Saturday, so I mean, you have to come out there prepared. You can't just look at it like, hey, we're 11-0, we're gonna walk over these guys. If you have that mentality, that's when teams get beat, right? So, I think for me looking at it, we can go 12-0 and get this win, and then we have the Big Ten championship there. But it comes back down to the goal is to win a national championship, and so, we have a handful of games to get to that mark. So I mean, the job's not done. Don't want to say, not saying, oh, we can use a loss here or there, but I think we're in good shape wherever we're at. Again, I think it just comes back down to it's one game at a time, and we are in the playoffs starting, this weekend essentially. And obviously, it kind of dictates and change. Win, lose, or draw. We kind of get shifted around of who we're going to play, I guess, moving forward there. But yeah, I think we go out there and handle business. I think it's a statement game still. I think it's a statement game. I think each game is a statement game from here on out, though, for sure.
Yeah, and you're right. It really is a rivalry that's changed in the past couple of years. In fact, back when we played up at Husky Stadium, I don't remember anyone calling it the greatest setting in college football, especially with that ugly ass track on the field in between the field and the fans. Now I actually believe them. I'm like, having been back for last year's game, I'm like, yeah, it's a lot more intimidating when you actually have the fans a little bit closer instead of 8 lanes away. But
it was a totally different type of feel then, because like you said, you don't have the fans right on top of you. Obviously, it's a great setting. It's right there off the lake. It is beautiful, right? But it just didn't really feel like your college atmosphere, because they were further away. You want those fans right on top of you to kind of feel them chirping at you and stuff like that. I love playing road games. Road games are the best for me, because it's just you and your team, it's you against the world, and I just thrive in those environments, because it's I'm gonna use that positive energy that they're giving to their team. I'm gonna give me some of that right there, and then when you make a big play, it just hits even more, because it's your way. You don't have your home team behind you, and it just brings a different type of camaraderie within the team in itself when you do go on the road. And obviously this game it's a home game, so it's going to carry its own weight. I know the fans are going to be geared up for sure.
Definitely. And one of the things that obviously hasn't changed in this rivalry is Oregon's always wearing the better uniforms. With this season, we've introduced the Generation O, which throws back to a facade of the Oregon's past different uniforms. Which one we've debuted so far this season has been your favorite?
Oh man, I don't even know. I'm a fan of wearing the all white. I'm a fan of wearing the all white. Even back in the day when we were playing, and we had a couple games at Washington State where we wore the all white. Obviously the Michigan game, the Stormtroopers that we came out there and rocked. I've always been a fan of that. Just nice, clean, sleek. But then some of the darker jerseys as well kind of fits. I love the throwbacks, even though it's a little bittersweet for me wearing throwback uniform. But I love the concept of the throwback uniform. I think it just pays just that the good homage to what Oregon football traditionally was, though, just that type of that green and yellow there. Not a fan of the all yellow. Not a fan of the all green per se. I like to mix it up a little bit. Yeah.
Walter, I think it's pretty fitting. The first time Oregon ever wore all white head to toe, it was at Husky Stadium, a game back in 2006 that you guys were able to participate in. Yeah. The question I had for you, it has to do with special teams, actually. During your time at Oregon, obviously, you were a phenomenal punt returner. Were able to have some huge plays in that portion of the game. This season, especially when we saw Oregon lose Tez Johnson at Michigan, suddenly there was immediately a problem with a muffed punt. Punt return has definitely, yards per punt return has dropped off significantly, but also just the security of the type of play has fallen off a little bit since Tez Johnson has left. Tell us a little bit about what's important as a punt returner and what really goes into that aspect of the game.
That's a good question. It's you got to have a lot of confidence out there, right? You have to have confidence in those 10 other guys. They're going to do their job and give you the necessary protection for you to be able to kind of securely receive that punt, especially the corners on the outside. If you don't really have trust in those guys being able to do their job, now you're starting to have that doubt creep in. Where are they at? You're kind of looking to see where they're at, and now you're just losing focus of where the ball is at. And the main priority as a punt returner is being able to field that ball, before even trying to get a return out there. Because it's they're trying to change the field. You don't want to have to muff punt and give the ball back, and now they have a short field. You put your defense back up there. Now they're in field goal range. 3 points is kind of almost secured. Right now you're trying to stop. You're trying to stop them from getting 7 points on the board, and those things kind of change the game. Special teams is a very overlooked type of aspect of the game, but they have so much impact on moving the needle in one direction if you're not able to be very sound within those phases. So, I think the biggest thing is like, we've always had a great depth of punt returners, at Oregon during my time in the years after. If one guy didn't come through, then you had the next guy that was able to come back up there and do their job. But I think the biggest thing is being able to track that ball, making sure that the ball is secure, but you really have to trust those guys in front of you. And that was the one thing that I was fortunate to benefit from, to where I had no doubts what was going on with those 10 other guys. I knew those guys were going to go fight and compete and take pride in the job that they were doing, of being out there, giving those times. So I never had any worry about where those guys were. I could just feel and sense where they were. And so I think that's the biggest thing is having that trust. Even earlier on, it's kind of, okay, punts up, you can kind of track it real quick, but then you can kind of get a quick little look. Okay, I see my guy over here is taking care of business. He's taking care of business over here. I'm gonna have time to be able to field this punt and maybe have some action, to be able to kind of get, 5 to 15 yards within that capacity.
Man, that's great to learn, because someone like me has no chance of returning or fielding any kind of a special teams kick. It's good to learn. I'd be remiss if I didn't, expand upon it. You'd mentioned the throwbacks we first wore, a game we talk about pretty often on the show. 2009 Cal game. Unfortunately, your last game that senior year. A big motivating factor, unfortunately, was Cal goes, kicks off the ball, and on the very first play, you have a knee injury, and our team really, really had to rally behind losing one of the big team leaders. And at that point, a pretty tumultuous season where every game was feeling like a struggle. What's one thing you took from that season and your rehab and ability to just overcome, that difficult situation that you take with you to this day?
Yeah, I think it started even in that off season. I think, it was kind of, some of the DBs we had a conversation of, hey, what's the goal? It's our senior year. We have a great team, very solid foundational team. And, it goes back to we want to go, national championship. And what are the things that we wanted to do? And I know during that time we had, I think there's 35 total workouts. All you had to do was make 30 workouts or something like that. So we just ended up making that whole offseason, in that summer, pretty much mandatory. And I know it kind of flustered some guys, and guys wanted their time and break, but it was kind of, seeing what was most important to the guys on the team there. And so I think that aspect of kind of banding together, moving forward, kind of, what's the ultimate goal of this team? What do you want to accomplish out of this situation? And who's willing to put in the work? And that was kind of the foundational aspect that we kind of initially set that kind of moved forward and progressed forward. Going into that Cal game, yeah, it was interesting. I mean, it was a just a miscommunication, blown coverage. That week we had a check with me type of kick return, whether based off of where the kicker was off the hash, it was going to be either a right return or a left return. And he kind of put it in this very gray area to where some guys were blocking the right return, some guys were blocking the left return. And, it was kind of a free for all when it came to it, trying to protect myself. A guy off the edge thought he was going to get double teamed, because on tape, when you're seeing it, he was expecting the double team coming his way. Double team runs past him, and he's pretty much running forward and falling down, losing his balance because he's gearing to take on two guys. And, just kind of got me in the knee as I was planted there. And even at that moment, I didn't know, that I tore my knee. I popped up and trotted off the field. I took a step and the knee buckled there, and they do the test. And they look, oh, your season's out. It was interesting. Okay, they were like, oh, it's a PCL sprain. They knew that knee was done. They knew right there that it was done. So we do the song and dance and get the MRI the next day. Usually by 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they usually have the results. I didn't hear a word from anybody until 8:30 that night. Got a call from Coach Neal, DB coach, and broke the news to me essentially. And I was in the girlfriend time, my mom, we were going to go to dinner, and got the call and broke down and immediately turned back around and went home. And kind of fell down. A couple coaches came past the house. Kind of fell down for myself through the night, but the next morning, 6:30 in the morning, I went to Chip Kelly's office and told him, I'm like, hey, this is bigger than me. We have to keep on moving forward. I'm going to get myself right. And, be here as a captain, and next man is up. And that was kind of the mentality. So for me, it was kind of learning at always seeing the bigger picture in a situation, being very optimistic. Even though that I was down, there was still a bigger goal that we were looking to accomplish. And the team, like I said, there were some up and down, guys going new positions. We introduced a new defense as well through the course of that halfway year. So it was kind of some adjustments going through that season. And guys stood up. Guys stood up, took ownership of the team, being thrusted into new positions, and was fortunate enough to go and made into earned a spot, went Pac-10, and go to the Rose Bowl. Didn't fare out how we wanted to, but then the work that previous year moved forward, and guys went to the national championship that following year. So for me, it was just proud to be able to see the guys kind of take ownership and leadership and step up from a situation and kind of carry that torch, if you will, and make it to the national championship game there. And it was great to see guys coming up and just seeing that growth of the team from that year prior going into that year against Auburn.
Walter, we don't want to take up too much more of your time. We appreciate how much of it you've spent with us already. Yeah. One question that kind of made me think of, especially thinking about the process and how that probably next calendar year went for you. What is the process like when you're rehabbing, not to return to play with that same team the next season, but you're rehabbing with the intention of going into the NFL draft and going on to that next stage? And then what was it like afterwards, just being able to be a part of those Seahawk teams that were so special?
Yeah, it was, again, very optimistic going into that draft. I felt like I had to put a good body of work together through the course of playing at Oregon. But then when you get into like the politics of it, it's like, okay, how they view me, like I'm damaged goods going into this situation. And so I was fortunate to talk to a bunch of coaches and former players that had the similar type of knee injury. And so just really working on the range of motion. So that was the biggest thing, was, really focusing on that range of motion. It was some daunting days. You're going 5-6 days a week, two to three sessions a day, and not seeing any progress. There were some tough days, earlier on, trying to get back into shape. And then the combine comes around, I wasn't doing anything. Pretty much was all medical. I did the bench press, but everything was kind of just on the merit of what the tape was going to be like, and just kind of understanding where sports medicine was during this time, and knowing that I would be able to get back around the season, because the injury was kind of relatively early in our season, right? It was end of September, early October when it happened. So, it was put me at that 9-month mark, if so, getting ready for that fall training camp. And then, sitting around and, hear my name, get the phone call from a 425 number, and see that it's, Pete, first thing Pete gets on the phone and says, he's like, hey, there's no more Ducks and there's no more Trojans. It's just Seahawks. And that was the first thing he said to me on the phone, because we had our own rivalry and things going on through the course of that. So it was like, all right, okay, we're doing the Seahawk thing there. So it was, it was great to see. Obviously, it was his first time, or his second time being back as a head coach in the NFL. His first draft class, great group of guys that kind of got drafted there. It was very interesting to see again, going back to that dynamic of seeing him, build the team, and seeing how he was talking, to the guys. And it wasn't Legion of Boom out the gate. It was years in the making, but we had great leaders in that secondary that took us underneath our wing, really showed us what it meant to be a pro, really looked out for us, and we had a great group of leaders in that DB room to kind of push things along. Even despite like that, after training camp was over, I mean, he cut half the team. We should have been walking around there with name tags, that first week going into the opening season. But even early on, it was a lot of Pac-10 guys. Pac-12 guys that were, in that locker room that he brought in, because those were guys that he's seen, either recruited or play against and watched film, and that's where he was comfortable in. So it was like the Pac-10 Seahawks, if you will, during that first year. But it was good to kind of see. It wasn't, oh, we're gonna win a Super Bowl. It was like, okay, let's own the NFC West. It was very progressional, and it wasn't until like that third year when it was like, okay, let's own the NFC as a whole, going into the playoffs. And then next year, that fourth year was like, we're gonna go win a Super Bowl. And so that was something that being familiar with coming from Oregon, the DB room was very similar to the D boys at Oregon. How guys, it was very close knit, very everyone was like brothers. We hung out off the field, held everyone accountable, and pushed each other. I think that was the biggest thing, though. So it was a lot of similarities from the group of guys that I played with at Oregon that just kind of remanifested itself in Seattle and ended up creating that Legion of Boom locker room.
Love it. And thanks again, Walt, for coming on with us. I just got to say, you're one of my favorite teammates to tell. And people ask, I'm like, this guy was one of the best leaders when I was young. And with that, need you to lead us into this Husky Hate Week with a little prediction for the game this week.
I appreciate that, Nick, though. It means a lot, man. Prediction, score-wise?
Yep.
I don't want them to score too many points, though. That's the thing. I see 42 for us. I seen us putting up 42. They got 42-17. 42-17.
Love it.
I'll give them a couple points.
All right. You heard it from the former Duck and Seahawk. Nobody knows better. Thanks again for joining us, Walt.
No, I appreciate it, Nick and Sam. Yeah.
Once a Duck, always a Duck, and go Ducks.
Go Ducks. Yeah, go Ducks.
Well, with that, I'm very glad that we can finally say we got Walt on the show, and even more excited to say, let's just give it to these Huskies and start breaking down exactly why we are going to be feeling pretty confident about finishing this season off 12-0 as we go against our new Big Ten rivals.
Well, Nick, and I'll tell you this. I think we can both admit, as much as we enjoy doing all of our Oregon State episodes every single year and all of our different titles that in some way involve the word civil or civility or whatever, I mean, it is really fun that the Washington game has been moved to rivalry weekend. That's really fun, man. It is going to be a lot of fun. I can already tell you, I might be spending Thanksgiving up in Seattle next year if this is the way that this is going to be going on a year in and year out basis. But the Oregon Ducks, they do have to take on the Washington Huskies, a Washington team that is very different than the one fans might be familiar with. Of course, Oregon, they played Washington twice last year. Neither result was what Oregon fans were wanting by any means at all, shape, or form, but this year's a different year. The Huskies this year, they are 6-5. They were able, with their last victory, to officially secure themselves a bowl berth at some point this season. Currently sitting at 7th in the Big Ten. This has been a team that has, well, frankly, they've struggled a little bit since joining the Big Ten, as you can imagine. They have 4 victories in conference thus far. They are 4-4 in conference play. Coming to Eugene, leaving Seattle, something that has not resulted in a single win this season for the Huskies. They have not won a game outside of the friendly confines of Husky Stadium. They are going to be trying to do so here against Oregon. First and foremost, Nick, if you've been able to see anything from the Huskies this year, from what you've seen, tell us a little bit about what you're noticing of the 2024 Washington Huskies.
Nah, I ain't seen a damn thing. So anyways, what I would say, have not watched them significantly, but as somebody that used to play World of Warcraft back when I played college football, I got to say that the World of Warcraft sponsorship, just too little, too late, guys. Too little, too late. I did see most of the Apple Cup game this year, which was a lot of fun and pretty interesting, but I'm not sure how much even, that is an entirely different team than what they're playing as now. So it's been very interesting to see how this team has kind of not only just changed from season to season, but week to week, they're still trying to find their identity. And apparently they don't want to announce who's playing quarterback. So trying to keep that a little bit tricky here. But I just think the most interesting thing is with this, again, becoming more of a formidable rivalry, that this is really the game that will separate us. In the past 10 years, it's gone 5-5. And the interesting thing is it bounced back from what, 2 Duck wins, 2 Husky wins, 3 Duck wins, 3 Husky wins, and now we need to turn around and go on a much, much longer streak. I think this is the time to do it. This is the team to do it against. And, even though it's a bit of a different team, a different set of players than the, team that came into Autzen, beat us, then beat us at their place last year, and then beat us in Vegas. Even though it's a different team, there's still the same ugly ass purple and gold uniforms I want to see pounded in the ground on Autzen Stadium on Saturday.
Well, and Nick, you mentioned the quarterback play. Will Rogers and Devin Williams, the 2 different guys that they've had back there playing quarterback. So far, Rogers this season, 220 of 311, 2,458 yards, 14 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. For Damon Williams Jr., the freshman, much more mobile, much more athletic, much more of a run around on you type of quarterback. He's 39 of 53, 369 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions for him so far on the season. That being said, he only started 1 game this year officially, and that was the Penn State game. He's gotten in at other times throughout the season and played a bit. This Washington team, if you're looking at who to stop, Coleman is a very good place to start, the running back. Jonah Coleman, the junior, he has 1,008 yards so far this season, 9 touchdowns on the ground. He's somebody that you can expect to be getting the ball a whole lot. Then as well, we're going over their other receivers, their other weapons, the receivers are where you got to look. Boston and Jackson, their leaders, 57 and 68 catches respectively, 764 yards for Boston, 663 for Jackson. This is a team, they haven't been scoring like crazy this year, but they can definitely go get some points. Defensively is a whole lot more where this team is built. Obviously, Steve Belichick, the defensive coordinator up there in Seattle, if that name sounds familiar. His dad's one of the greatest NFL coaches of all time, though. See, they're putting together a decent defense back there. Guys like Bruner, the linebackers, having a very, very strong season. Talia, he's got 3.5 sacks so far on the year. Somebody who can definitely get in there and cause some problems. This Washington team, though, they are very different. Lost 3 receivers of the NFL, lost an entire offensive line to the NFL, lost a quarterback to the NFL, lost a whole lot of other players in other places, including a couple of transfers like Jabbar Muhammad, who finds his way down in Oregon. Nick, we've already had a long episode. We got a few minutes left here. What are some of the keys to this game for you? What are some of the things Oregon's going to have to do to come out of here victorious? And after that, we'll get into predictions.
Yeah, so the first and foremost, the key is, embrace the fact that this team hasn't won a road game and they're going into what is going to be a crazy Autzen Stadium. One I'm happy I'm finally going to be able to say I will be in this Saturday, and excited to see all of you there. The other thing is it's senior night. So a lot of these guys, this is their potentially last chance to play in Autzen. All things considered, the way this playoff works, let's knock on wood right now. But hopefully all things go well and Oregon continues to go on its path that we want towards winning each and every one of these games on the way. Hopefully it's the last game in Autzen Stadium, but there is a playoff home game there. Won't have the early introductions and that emotional feeling that comes with the senior night. So there's a lot of that you have to weather and then still be able to find that same energy to kick it up when the kickoff starts. So that's an important thing to just keep in mind there with senior night, always a little bit longer. And, I've been on a team where that kind of just drags the energy out of you and you don't quite have that same thing as soon as the kickoff starts and don't perform as well as you expected. So you got to get over that. Now, number 2, just keep control of the football. The only way I think you keep them in this game is if you turn the ball over, you have some silly mishaps on special teams, fumbles, interceptions, anything, or just penalties. Dumb penalties we got to cut out. We've, kind of slipped up here in the last couple of weeks with being a little bit more clean, penalty-free team. But hey, this is a great week to go ahead and try and clean those things up and just play as good a football as you can going into that Big Ten championship, because whoever you end up seeing there, it's going to be a real test of having to play as perfect a football as you can.
And that's exactly where this Oregon team is at. As you heard Walt say in our interview, at this point, basically everything's a playoff game. It still has to work out exactly who you're going to play when, but everything is basically a playoff game. Nick, just a few minutes left here. We got to go over some predictions. First and foremost, we want to say always, if you've got a prediction for this game, throw it in the comments below. Put it to us on social media. Send it to us personally if that's what you prefer to do. If you do have a prediction that hits, that comes close to hitting, or especially one that hits right on the nose, we might have crap from Nick's apartment that belongs to you. But for now, folks, we've got to give you ours. Nick, I don't know if you want to go first this week. I don't know if you want me to, but it's prediction time.
Mine's real easy. Ducks by 1,000,000. Let's go nice and easy here. We'll take it easy, get through this week healthy, put up 31 on the Huskies, and give them a nice fat 0. And no, that's not an O for how many championships we have. That's a 0 for exactly how many Ducks I give about the Huskies.
We've got Nick going 31-0, folks. I like that prediction a lot. I'm going to go with, I can't believe I'm doing this. I really shouldn't be doing this, but once again, I'm going to say Oregon is able to actually break that 40-point marker. I know they haven't done it since September. They haven't done it since playing a group of 5 school, but frankly, they've got to be able to do it against Washington. What this team did to them last year, what this team has been doing to Oregon for the last couple of years now, heck, just what they've been doing to Dan Lanning. It took until last week against Wisconsin for us to learn that Dan Lanning can beat a UW team. So with that in mind, Oregon 41, Washington 13. Ducks break that 40-point marker. They get out of senior night with a win. They're on to the Big Ten championship. Whoever that might be against, they're heading to Indy 12-0.
I like that this week I got to be more suspicious of you copying Walt's prediction than mine. So
another one where, again, I had it written down and then I heard his and I was like, damn, it's another close one.
Man, well, at least here's how you know it's been this long of a season with such a great defense is we're getting to this point of the season, and I think I've just resigned myself to the fact we don't need to score over 40, and I might actually just like shutting out other teams more than scoring a bunch of points. That feels wrong to say out loud now that I say it, but now that we're here, I kind of like it, and it sure would be awesome if that's the way the Ducks found their way to their first national championship through the defense. Man, what a storyline that would be. But first, we got to take care of these Huskies. And, man, I hope, shutout or not, we all enjoy ourselves and have a great time. And have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Once a Duck, always a Duck.